She didn't knock. She never knocked anymore. I heard the jingle of her keys, the pause, and then the door creaked open like it was guilty. She stood in the entryway like she expected everything to be the same. Her heels clicked twice on the tile before she realized something was off. The lights were still on, but the silence wasn't normal. It was deliberate. That's when she saw it. The key right there in the center of the dining table, alone, clean, cold, like it was waiting to say the one thing I couldn't anymore. She didn't move, not yet. She looked around, scanning the space like someone who wasn't sure if they had just walked into the wrong house or the wrong version of their life. The couch cushions were gone. The coat rack was bare. The coffee mug she used every morning, gone. No note, no trace of me. Only that key, and the faint scent of peppermint. I left that on purpose. I knew it would remind her of the night she told me she needed freedom, then disappeared for 12 hours and came back smiling like nothing happened. I was watching her from across the street, yet I saw the whole thing through the window of an abandoned rental with peeling blinds and a clear view of the front door. I didn't want to watch, but I needed to. She walked in like she still had rights here, like promises hadn't been broken in that very room, like her perfume didn't still sting when I smelled it in someone else's car. She thought she could come back tonight and I'd be here waiting like usual. But this wasn't usual anymore. This was the aftermath. And the funny thing is, I didn't shout. I didn't text. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just left the key right where she'd find it. And I took something with me she never thought I'd take. Not the car, not the money. I took the truth. When I left the key on the table, I didn't think she'd notice right away. Nora only ever noticed things when they affected her. If the air conditioner stopped working in the middle of summer, she'd feel it. But if I stopped talking, stopped reaching out, stopped asking how her day was, she'd just assume I was tired, not broken. That night, I didn't drive to a hotel or a friend's place. I went to the one place I hadn't visited since my mother died. Her old house. Still standing, barely. Windows foggy, the porch rotting, but it was mine now. Quiet, forgotten, just like me. I unlocked the door, flipped on the breaker, and stood in the middle of the living room until my legs gave out. You ever sit in a place so still it feels like the walls are listening? I swear they were. They heard what I couldn't bring myself to say out loud. They knew I was a coward, that I hadn't confronted Nora, that I'd spent 6 months pretending not to see the signs because I didn't want to lose her even though she was already gone. It was easier to pretend she loved me than admit she pitied me. I remember 2 months ago, we were at some backyard party her friend Bria threw. Nora disappeared for half the night. When she came back, her lipstick was smeared and she smelled like a cologne I didn't wear. I asked her about it, half joking, half desperate, and she just giggled and said, "Relax, Elwood. Don't be so uptight." That word uptight has been stuck in my head ever since, because that's what I became to her. Uptight, predictable, dull. She used to love that I didn't drink too much, didn't flirt, didn't need to be the center of attention. Now those things made me invisible, and I think that's what broke me the most. I didn't matter enough to hate. I wasn't cheated on out of passion. I was ignored out of boredom. At the house, I unpacked my bag, just a few shirts, socks, a toothbrush, and my old camera. I hadn't used it in years. Nora said photography didn't go anywhere, and I gave it up without a fight like everything else. But I turned it on that night, took a picture of the empty living room, the dust in the sunlight, the peeling wallpaper. It looked like grief had taken physical form. I didn't sleep. I just sat there watching the photo on the camera screen, zooming in, looking for something, anything that would give me clarity. Then my phone buzzed. "Nora, where are you?" No punctuation, no concern. She didn't ask if I was okay, just where I was. I stared at it for 5 minutes before putting the phone face down. She wasn't texting because she missed me. She was texting because something was out of place. Me? She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about losing control. I didn't answer. I let the key speak for me. And as I sat in that silent house, a question started to form when I hadn't let myself ask before. What if she didn't just cheat? What if she planned this all along? The next morning, I woke up on the floor. My back ached, my neck was stiff, and the world outside the cracked windows looked washed out, like someone had drained the color from it overnight. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like an hour, thinking about how easily a person's life can shift into something unfamiliar. Yesterday I was in our shared home. Today I was a ghost living inside the past. I didn't go back for anything, not even the charger. I forgot. I let the phone die. I didn't want her words, didn't want her explanations. What could she possibly say? That it wasn't what it looked like? That the late nights, the lipstick smudges, the tension I swallowed for half a year were all just figments of my imagination? That she loved me but needed something more? I knew how that script ended. I've read it online too many times. But then Sunday came, and with it a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally played it back, I felt my blood chill. "Hey, this is Nolan from the Ridgeway Inn. I think your card was used for a 2-night stay here last weekend. Something weird came up. I just thought I should call. The woman who checked in gave your name as her husband, but I don't think that's right. Anyway, if you want me to void the charges, just call back. Sorry if this is awkward." I sat there listening to the message again and again. Ridgeway. I knew that place. It was 20 minutes from our house, hidden behind a bunch of evergreens off Route 7. It wasn't the kind of place you stayed at for convenience. It was where people went when they didn't want to be seen. I pulled out my wallet. The hotel receipt was still folded behind my driver's license. I'd found it in Nora's coat pocket a week ago. At the time, I convinced myself it must have been part of a work retreat she mentioned. But now, the lie collapsed like wet paper. She hadn't even used her own card. She used mine. That's when something shifted inside me. Not anger, not rage. Just this deep, bitter disappointment that stung harder than fury ever could. She didn't even respect me enough to hide it well. I wasn't just a ghost in her life. I was an ATM with a last name. Later that night, I finally turned my phone back on. 5 missed calls from Nora, 2 voicemails, both short. First one, "Call me." Second one, "You're being ridiculous. Come home. Let's talk like adults." I didn't respond. Instead, I looked up Ridgeway and on my laptop. The reviews were trash. The lighting was bad, no cameras in the hallways, cash preferred. It wasn't a hotel, it was a hideout. Then, something hit me. The date on the receipt. It was from the weekend. She said she was visiting her sister in Boise. Her sister called me that Saturday night. Just small talk. She asked how the garden was doing, how work was. She never mentioned Nora being there. I didn't think twice about it then, but now I called her back. "Hey, Susan," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Did Nora stay with you last weekend?" Long pause. Then, in the softest, guiltiest voice I've ever heard, "Elwood, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. I thought you knew." That's when I realized this went deeper than I imagined. It wasn't just one mistake. It wasn't a secret fling. This was organized, hidden, built on months of lies. And suddenly, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was being played. After that phone call with Susan, I sat in the old dining room of my mother's house for nearly an hour without moving. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. Nora hadn't just lied to me. She'd woven a whole false world, and I was the only one walking through it blindfolded. Everyone else had at least some idea. Many in me. I was the idiot holding a hotel receipt like it was some sacred scroll trying to piece together a life that didn't exist anymore. That night, I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. I logged into my old email account, the one I used before Nora convinced me we should consolidate everything. Efficiency, she called it. Transparency, she added with a smile, I now realize was more for her benefit than mine. I logged in, half expecting the inbox to be empty or filled with spam. But in the archives was something I forgot even existed, my old cloud photo storage. And that's when I saw it, a picture from 3 months ago taken automatically by my backup app. I must have left my tablet at home that day. It had a setting that snapped photos when it detected motion. I never turned it off. In the picture, Nora was in our kitchen, but she wasn't alone. A man stood next to her. Close. Too close. His hand wasn't just resting near hers. It was on her lower back, fingers lightly curled around the belt loop of her jeans. She was laughing. That laugh, the one I used to hear when we drive to the coast with the windows down. It was directed at him. He wasn't anyone I recognized. He looked maybe mid-40s, tall, kind of rugged, wore a flannel shirt, and looked at her like he already owned her. That was the part that broke me. Not the proximity, not even the hand, but the look. He wasn't flirting. He was confident, like he had nothing to fear, like I didn't exist. I stared at the image until it blurred, and then I remembered the day I had left that morning for a site visit 3 hours away. Nora said she had a migraine and stayed home from work. I never questioned it. Now I couldn't stop questioning everything. I downloaded the photo and saved it 3 different ways. Then I did what scared people do. I didn't confront her. I didn't call. I didn't show up at the house. I just started digging, searching for flannel shirt mystery man online through reverse image searches. Even tried using facial recognition tools I barely understood. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. Then came the next surprise. I checked our shared calendar, the one Nora and I synced years ago and hadn't used in months. She used to be obsessive about it, color-coded everything. So it was strange to see that there was one entry still there except for the upcoming Friday and follow-up with L. That's all it said. At first, I thought it might be a doctor or a lawyer. Then I remembered something that made my skin crawl. 3 years ago, when I first met Nora's co-workers at a company dinner, there was a guy named Levi. He was an outside consultant, very smooth, very harmless in that overly charming way. I never liked him. Nora used to tease me for being jealous of her gay work friend, but something about it always felt off. His touch lingered a little too long. His smile stretched a little too wide. Could leave IBL, and more importantly, had he ever really been harmless? I looked him up. His company bio was still active. Same face, flannel shirt in the headshot. My stomach twisted. And that's when I realized he hadn't just shown up. He'd been in the picture for a long time. In the background, in the group texts, in the excuses, in the late meetings that went just a little too late. I felt sick. I stood up, pacing the room. The photo of them frozen and that laugh still glowing from my screen like a scar. It wasn't just an affair. It was a slow surgical replacement of me. I didn't sleep that night. The glow from my laptop screen stayed with me even after I closed the lid. That image, Nora and Levi in my kitchen, sharing laughter and space like it had always belonged to them, was burned into the backs of my eyelids. Every time I blinked, there it was. Her joy, his confidence, my absence. Around 5 a.m., I found myself driving through the streets of our neighborhood. I didn't have a destination, just the need to move. I passed by our house, though it didn't feel like mine anymore, and saw her car in the driveway. The porch light was still on. Something about that made me clench the steering wheel. She'd always insisted I leave it on for her. Even when I stayed up late waiting, she'd text, "Don't forget the light." It was still there, glowing quietly, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Instead of going home, I stopped at a diner 20 minutes away and ordered black coffee I didn't want. The waitress looked at me like I was Rogiel in a hoodie. I must have looked awful. Greasy hair, red eyes, 2 days in the same jeans. I scrolled through old messages from Nora, looking for patterns, timelines, things I missed. And that's when I saw it. A reservation confirmation buried deep in her emails. She'd forwarded it to our shared account months ago. Must have forgotten to delete it. It was for a place called Barlark downtown. Pricey, trendy, the kind of place she always said was too loud for us. The reservation was from a Friday in March. A two-top at 8:30 p.m. for Nora Fields and guest. I remember that night. I'd been out of town for work. She said she had a migraine again and needed to rest. I called to check on her around 9 p.m. and it went to a voicemail. She didn't call me back until midnight. Said she'd fallen asleep. Now, I knew she hadn't been sleeping. She'd been on a date with him. I knew what I should do. Block her, lawyer up, burn the bridge, and walk away. But instead, I made the worst possible choice. One that would take me from a wounded husband to something else entirely. I made a reservation, same place, same table number. This coming Friday, I told myself it wasn't revenge. I told myself I just needed to see what kind of lies she could tell while sitting across from me. I wanted to see her face when she realized I knew, but the truth was uglier. I wanted to sit in the chair he sat in. I wanted to breathe the same air she'd once offered him. I wanted to contaminate the memory that we crawled by. Nora called, texted, left voicemails that grew more frantic. "Where are you?" turned into, "You're acting crazy." And finally, "Please, Elwood. I'm sorry if I've done something wrong. Just come home." I didn't answer. The silence felt good, like control. For once, I wasn't the one chasing. Friday came fast. I dressed in clothes she hadn't seen in months. Stuff she called outdated when she gave me a style makeover last year. I didn't care how I looked. I just needed to be there. I arrived 5 minutes early. The host asked if I was celebrating anything. I said no. The table was in the corner, candle lit, surrounded by couples pretending their lives weren't collapsing like mine had. I sat and waited. I wasn't sure who I expected to walk through the door. Nora, Levi, neither. But then, just after 8:30, someone walked in and froze when they saw me. It wasn't Nora. It was Bria, her friend. The same one she'd claimed to go out with countless times. Bria walked in, stopped mid-step, and stared. Her mouth opened like she was about to greet someone else. Then she saw me, alone at the table. Her expression changed. She turned to leave, but I stood up. "Bria," I said. She froze again. "Sit," I said. "Please." Her eyes darted around the room like she was trying to find an exit that wouldn't make a scene. Then she slowly walked over and took the seat across from me. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I slid my phone across the table and tapped the screen. The photo, the hotel receipt, the reservation email. "I'm not here to threaten anyone," I said quietly. "I'm not even here to hurt Nora. I just want to hear the truth from someone who doesn't owe me a lie." Bria stared at the images, then let out the kind of sigh that isn't just exhaustion. It's surrender. "The wood," she whispered. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." Bria stared at the photos like they were radiation. She didn't touch the phone, didn't even blink for a long time. Her lipstick had smudged slightly from whatever drink she'd had before arriving. Her hands trembled, not in guilt, I realized, but from finally being caught between two truths she'd been juggling too long. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." She repeated, softer this time, almost rehearsed. "Then how?" I asked. "When after the divorce papers, or when I stopped paying for the house? She's probably already promised someone else." Bria winced like the words physically landed. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. I wanted her to speak, not run. And to my surprise, she stayed. "Elwood, look. You didn't do anything wrong," she said. "You really didn't. I want to make that clear." That word again, clear. It felt like glass cracking between us. "I need you to understand something," she continued. "Nora, she's not the kind of person who just wakes up one day and cheats. She builds a scaffolding around it first. She creates a version of you in her head that's easier to walk away from." I looked at her then, really looked at her. She wasn't defending Nora. She was warning me. "Did she ever say I was controlling?" I asked. Bria blinked, then slowly nodded. "Did she say I was jealous? That I didn't understand her needs?" Another nod. "And did you believe her?" A pause. Then, "No, but it wasn't about what I believed. It was about what she needed us to believe, so we wouldn't ask questions." That hit hard, harder than I expected. Nora hadn't just betrayed me. She rewrote me, turned me into a villain, so her exit would look like self-defense. Bria reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "There's something I need to show you." She scrolled quickly, then turned the screen toward me. It was a video, blurry at first, recorded secretly from across a restaurant table. I recognized the place. It was the same bistro where Nora once told me she had a networking lunch. I watched as Nora leaned in close to Levi. He looked relaxed, smug. Their hands were touching beneath the table. Her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen in years. I watched as she whispered something into his ear. There was no audio, but her mouth was visible. Bria tapped the screen, rewound, paused. "Watch her lips," she said. "This part." I leaned in and I saw Nora mouth the words, "He won't leave. I've tried everything. He just clings. Clings." That word landed like a hammer to the ribs. So that's who I was now. A barnacle on her glamorous life. A pathetic shadow who couldn't take a hint. Meanwhile, she was planning her escape, spooning risotto into the mouth of a man who'd probably never made her coffee at 6 a.m. Never waited outside the pharmacy when she had migraines. Never folded her sweaters the way she liked. I pulled back. "You recorded this?" I asked. "I didn't mean to spy," Bria said quickly, "but I had doubts, and I needed proof. Not for you, for me. Because I saw how she changed. I saw how easily she turned everything into someone else's fault. I've watched her do it before. You're not the first." That stopped me cold. "Wait, what do you mean I'm not the first?" Bria hesitated. Then she finally said it. "Nora did this to someone else before you back when she lived in Arizona. She was married before briefly. Told everyone he was abusive. But then his sister contacted me after she saw photos of Nora on my social feed. Said her brother's life was destroyed, that he didn't even know she'd filed for divorce until she posted a photo with a new guy a week later. I didn't know what to say. My wife, my Nora, had lied about being married before. I'd asked her years ago, and she told me she'd dated losers but never tied the knot. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? And now, I was one of them. The new loser, the next fool, the next clingy man she'd paint as unstable and obsessive just to step into the next chapter of her flawless life. I felt something collapse inside me in that moment. Not rage, not tears, just this deep, hollow vacancy, like I had finally run out of anything worth fighting for. I looked at Bria. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She took a moment, then whispered, "Because you're the only person who never lied in this whole mess." I didn't know what to do with that, so I stood up. "Keep the video," she said as I walked away. "You might need it sooner than you think." And she was right, because 2 days later I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was one line: "He's not just her lover, he's her plan." I stared at the letter for a long time, long enough that my coffee went cold and the light outside the window turned orange, then gray. The handwriting was tight, unfamiliar. There was no signature, no context, just those 8 words. He's not just her lover, he's her plan. A rational part of me wanted to believe it was a prank. Maybe Bria sent it, trying to push me into action. Or maybe it was Nora herself playing one of those manipulative chess moves. She was so good at planting confusion, pulling strings. But something told me this was different. It didn't feel emotional. It felt calculated. So I started thinking like her. What kind of plan would require a lover? What was the end game? That question haunted me for hours until I finally remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. Our will. We drafted one the year after we got married. At the time, it seemed like a responsible adult thing to do. We'd sat in a lawyer's office downtown, filled out forms, signed things we didn't really read. Most of it was boilerplate. If either of us died, the other got everything. If both of us died, the money would go to Nora's niece. It hadn't crossed my mind since, but now it made my chest tighten. I logged into the cloud folder where we stored important documents, bank info, insurance, tax files. We hadn't updated it in years, but to my surprise, the password still worked. The folder was untouched, or so it seemed. Then I noticed something strange. There was a subfolder called Tax Prep 2023. Normal enough, except Nora never handled our taxes. That was always my job. She hated numbers. Always said they gave her hives. I clicked the folder. Inside were 5 files. Only one had a date modified within the last month. It was labeled Revision Draft, PDF. I opened it. It wasn't a tax document. It was a newly revised version of our will. The language had been changed. Where it once said we were joint beneficiaries, the document now stated that in the event of my death under unusual or sudden circumstances, Nora would assume sole ownership of our home, all assets, and a life insurance policy that I'd forgotten even existed. One we set up as part of her employer benefits when we first got married. The kicker? My signature was there, scanned in, copied from the original draft. I sat there frozen, the cursor blinking in the corner of the screen like it was daring me to understand what I was seeing. She had forged a new will. She had forged my name. And now she was quietly maneuvering everything into place. The hotel stays, the lies, the slow isolation. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a razor. If I died tomorrow, there wouldn't be questions. There wouldn't even be suspicion. Just a funeral no one would cry at, and a transfer of wealth that looked clean on paper. I backed out of the folder, downloaded every file, sent them to a private email I hadn't used in years. Then I copied them to a flash drive and stuffed it into a sock in my duffel bag. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in the hallway of the old house, knees pulled up to my chest, waiting for something, anything to move in the shadows. For a while I thought I was going insane. Maybe I was. But then, just past 3 a.m., my phone lit up. A text from an unknown number. "She knows you met Bria." That was it. No name, no reply option. The number disconnected immediately after. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. That's when I realized I couldn't go back, not even to say goodbye. Nora didn't just want me gone. She wanted me forgotten. I left the house just after sunrise. The flash drive zipped inside the lining of my coat. I didn't take anything else with me. No photos, no wedding ring, no last keepsake of a life that wasn't real. I drove east, past neighborhoods still asleep, past the bakery Nora used to love, past the river trail we walked when we still pretended to know each other. For the first time in months, I felt clear. I didn't go to the police, not yet. Instead, I found a lawyer. His name was Colin Hoy, small office, no receptionist, just a folding chair in the corner and a jar of peppermint candy on his desk. He didn't ask for drama. He asked for facts. I gave him the flash drive, the altered will, the forged signature, the hotel receipts, and the screenshot of the text from the burner number. He looked through it all without blinking. Then he sat back, folded his hands, and said quietly, "You need to be very, very careful from this point forward." I nodded. I already knew. Colin filed for a restraining order that same day. He submitted a formal request to freeze the joint accounts, and he contacted the insurance provider to flag suspicious beneficiary changes. Every move was quiet, clean, no warning, no escalation. Nora didn't see it coming. 2 days later, I got a single message from her. "Why are you doing this to me?" No apology, no denial, just a desperate pivot. Her usual reflex when control slipped out of reach. I didn't respond. She showed up at Colin's office the next morning, apparently demanding to speak to her husband. She didn't get past the door. The investigation into the altered will was open quietly because I hadn't accused her directly, hadn't gone public. It wasn't a scandal, just paperwork. I told Colin I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to ruin her life. I just wanted to make sure she couldn't ruin mine. In the weeks that followed, things began to settle. The silence felt different now. Not like absence, but like peace. Bria and I spoke once more, briefly. She told me Nora had tried to spin a new story, claiming I was emotionally unstable and possibly violent. Bria didn't buy it. Neither did anyone else who knew me. Nora moved out of the house a week before the hearing, left behind the same leather jacket I once gave her. Funny how the things people cling to and love are always the easiest for them to forget. As for me, I moved into a quiet apartment outside the city. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls, a coffee machine, and a second-hand couch that doesn't creak when I sit on it. I found an old film camera at a garage sale and started taking photos again. Rusty, sure, but it feels good. Like I'm building something real, frame by frame. One evening, weeks later, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sun dip behind the trees. A knock came at the door. For a second, my stomach dropped. But it wasn't Nora. It was a delivery. A package, no return address. Inside was a small book of printed photos, old ones from our early years. Smiling selfies, trips we never finished, laughs I thought were real. There was a note tucked inside. "You didn't deserve what I did to you. I hope you forgive me completely." And I closed the book gently. Not angry, not broken, just free. Because for the first time, I didn't want her to come back. And I didn't leave the key. I took it with me.